Alright, so now that we got all of the fixtures made, what you want to do is get with management to find out a good place to actually get the materials sawn off. So if they have a place that's around the corner, kind of out of nowhere, you can see here he's letting us go to the side of the building from where the actual entrance is. Some electric down there, just getting set up wherever out of everybody's way, so that way you won't have any problems, and if you have a problem you can easily get somewhere. Alright, so now we're starting to work on the measurements for the cubbies. This is going to be labeled cubby number 2 on a sheet of paper. I went ahead and labeled cubby number 1, cubby number 2, and cubby number 3 to mark all the measurements down. Cubby number 1 is going to be starting from the left, coming to your right. This will be cubby number 2. Cubby number 3 will be around that corner over there. So what you want to do is, first get all your measurements down for the first cubby you're going to work on. Try and make it to where it's not at a register that is not being, try and make it to where it's at a register that's not being used. Work with the management so you can get a fair idea of, how busy the time is, if you need to wait, if they can close down a register, open up the other one so you can get a little bit of work done. But if it gets busy, try and steer clear out of the way. It'll save you time, that way everybody's not trying to, buy stuff while you're working, trying to move around you. So we're going to go get some measurements done, and we'll be back. Alright, so now you can see we're starting to measure out some 2x4s. These are actually going to be a part of the base that goes underneath the counter. These are going to screw into the bottom wall, and then also at the bottom of the counter. I'll explain a little bit more when we get back inside, but for now we're just measuring these out. That way we already have them pre-cut. Just remember, whenever you are cutting, for safety precautions, you're going to wear some type of goggles, whether it be sunglasses, or you can buy these at Home Depot. And if you have sensitive hearing, it's always a good idea to get some earplugs as well. And if you're working with the wood so you don't get splinters or anything like that, just get you some standard utility gloves to wear. And then just be safe. If you're using a circular saw, just remember, be safe. Always watch where you're cutting. Definitely watch your fingers. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, so what we've done, since we pre-measured our 2x4s that are going to fit back into the cubby to go as our base to screw in the wood laminate panels, we've got some L brackets. And what we've done is pre-drilled some holes with a very small, very fine, small drill bit, because these screws are extremely small. So, you can just see the size of the screw. It's very tiny. So to pre-drill the holes is going to be very easier to work with, so to speak. Alright, so whenever you're making your measurements for your wood laminate sheet, just go, a notch here, a notch there, a notch there, a notch there. Make sure you have the correct height. That's what we're measuring right now. So it's at 25.5 inches. Make sure you have some kind of level to make sure the straight line you're marking all the way across is going to be completely level. So when you're sawing, nothing's going to be uneven. Alright, so we're getting ready to make our cuts right now. One useful tip I found online is when you're cutting with laminate, especially with a circular saw, to help keep it from chipping, just put some masking tape right beside where the line is. So that way when you have the top part of your wood, the top part of the sheet that you're going to be cutting when it's done is going to be this top part right here. So the masking tape needs to be right below that line where you're cutting. That way it helps to prevent splintering. Alright, so after we cut, we haven't put the T-molding on yet, but this is kind of how it's going to look whenever we get it installed. It's going to cover up part of the cubby. On the top, whenever you're putting it in, make sure that the top that you did not, the side that you did not cut that already has this line already grouted in for the T-molding, make sure that's on the top, because if you did chip anything, it's not going to be noticeable at the top for anybody. It's going to be down at the bottom. So just make sure you get that done. Okay, so right now we're putting on the T-molding in the side. What we did first was, you can see how it's kind of already in the line right there. We took a knife and cleaned the line that's already there all the way through, just with a knife or an X-Acto knife, just to make it a little bit easier, and then we just hammered it in, all around the area. Okay, so as kind of a continuation from putting the T-molding on the sides, you can see how you have it along side edge here. The edge of the board that you did cut, you're going to be installing H bracket along the bottom, and then whenever you actually get inside to install the sheet up against the cubby to cover it up, you'll install an H bracket in between each sheet also. The H bracket is going to look exactly like that, and one thing you'll notice, this little rounded edge is what's going to face out towards the front. You want to make sure this flat edge is facing towards the back. So whenever you do put it on the bottom of the wood, this you'll fit it over the bottom piece of the wood, and then you'll come underneath this other side. You'll flip the board over, and you'll just insert, just put in some small screws in there on the side. So yeah, whenever you have the H bracket on there, you'll just put a couple screws in here, there, wherever you can, just to make sure it holds on. And for the H bracket that goes in between each sheet, you really won't have to do anything to it because it'll already be, a tight fit on there. It's not going to move. So that is how the H bracket is going to work. Actually, there have been a few slight changes to the work scope project for the cubby installation. As you can see in this picture that was taken from a previous test site, that the wood is actually overlapping the bottom of the lip of the cubby. That's how we're going to have you do it. So whenever you cut your 2x4s, please make sure that the edge is completely flush with the side, and the L bracket will go up right here on the side also. And the same thing at the top. You have one at the top on the left hand side, one at the bottom on the left hand side, one at the bottom on the right hand side, and one at the top on the right hand side as well. That way you have proper bracing for each wood panel sheet. And when you get ready to install, you'll notice that this has the H bracket already in place on this side. That way whenever you slide the additional board into it, it'll already to be set there for you. If you notice down here at the bottom of one of the sheets, it's already installed. This is the same H bracket that's going to go in between each sheet. So you're actually going to install that on the bottom of this sheet prior to actually drilling it in. You'll fit the H bracket on there, take some small screws, and drill it into the bottom. That way it'll actually look like the trim, as you can see here, and in between each sheet. So make sure you do that before you actually drill it into the 2x4s. Alright, so we're about halfway done with our first cubby panel. You can see where the 2x4s were, where we just put the screws in down at each line. It's good to actually mark probably on the countertop and down there at the base where it is. You can kind of see a little pencil mark right there. We'll wipe that off when we're done. That way you know exactly where to screw in on each side. And you still got the other 2x4s where the next panel is about to go in. One thing to notice, sometimes you'll have these little holes that you'll have to kind of work and trim, so make sure you get measurements from the inside of the panel. They're about 3/4 of an inch, so make sure you compensate for that whenever you're measuring back. And then also measure from the top. Really, it can kind of fit underneath there, and it'll be level with this. You can go maybe like a 1/2 inch or inch or two. It didn't really matter how far down it goes. Just make sure that you compensate for this hole. That way there's nothing there, so there's no trash or any kind of debris can fall in there and get loose.